Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Premodern. Once again, more Premodern stuff. Always one of the more fun and interesting things to talk about. A little bit more focused. Usually when I talk about other things, it's like, oh, it's just random crap that I have on my mind. A little less focused, a little more rambly. But today, we're going to be laser focused. Laser frickin' focused. Laser frickin' focused on frickin' wild mongrel. Frickin' laser wild mongrels with lasers. So let's talk about blue green madness. So old deck back in the day, during the time when Odyssey or Torment more specifically, I guess. Well, really, I mean Judgment. When Judgment was available, you had all the good stuff like Quiet Speculation and Wonder and stuff like that. During Odyssey block, it's a good block deck. It's good and standard at the time. Pretty sweet, saw a lot of play all over the place. Even up till 2010, with the sort of pseudo survival Madness decks in Legacy that were pretty crazy. Even though the Madness versions I don't think were really the best, was still pretty good. Still pretty good deck. So that was cool. That was cool. So what it is, we got an aggro control deck. Yep, that's right. Aggro freaking control. This is kind of an archetype that has been maybe not the best in this format due to lack of dual lands. Really is the big one. So you can't play stuff like Gush very easily. Your mana's worse. You can't fetch into your um, like tropical islands and stuff like that to Daze and Gush and all that good stuff. So it's a little harder to find aggro control decks to really sort of um, be competitive. I mean, there's certainly different options and a lot of different things I've experimented with. But this is a pretty good one, I must say. A little bit different than the other ones because it's got a lot of big boys in it, and a lot of big flying boys. I don't know why they fly, but I guess that's what Wonder does. So you got arrogant worms and stuff. 3 mana 4/4s. Roar the Worm, which will be typically just flashing back 4 mana 6/6s. And of course, they all got evasion with Wonder. Thanks, Wonder. Very nice of you. So that's kind of nice. And so you could just keep slamming just big stupid fatties. And it's kind of nice against like control decks and stuff. You just be like, blam, here's a fatty. Blam, here's a fatty. And then being able to fly is nice because you don't have to deal with the ground getting gummed up by their creatures, like say against control decks, like their Decree of Justice tokens, or their Mistress Factories and so on. So that's kind of nice. You can fly over every other deck's crap, like against the Rock. Of course, they have walls and Bravnus Balos and all sorts of crap like that. So you got some big boys and they fly. So that's sweet. It's a little bit different than other aggro control decks, which tend to play like smaller dorks. And there's a lot of filtering, which is pretty sweet. So that lets us see our sideboard cards more often, and just lets us fix our hand. And of course, even better, very recently, well, last couple of weeks, I guess, we have the unbanning of Frantic Search in Premodern, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty interesting card. Definitely does some stuff. Doesn't really fit even in all the graveyard decks because 3 mana is a lot. So stuff like Reanimator doesn't really want to play it for the most part. But it's pretty good here. Pretty good here. So you could, like on an empty board on turn 3, you can ambush people with just like a roar of the worm, excuse me, arrogant worm, which is pretty sweet. Is great, so people don't really see that coming. So it gives you a little bit more consistency. So even if they kill your wild mongrel or your aquamoeba, you can still throw out some big boys and more discards. So that's sweet. So you can see more cards afterboard, see your sideboard cards more often, and that's pretty good. And of course, Frantic Search is just good. Get more cards in your graveyard for like say Circular Logic 2, and lets you play more stuff. So even if you don't draw like an arrogant worm or something, still lets you say like pump your root walla and like discard your circular logic to counter a spell, stuff like that. So it's pretty good. I'd say it's overall an upgrade. Not a huge one, but it's pretty nice, and you can do some cool stuff with it. So it's definitely probably something that's going to stay in the deck, I'd imagine. So let's go ahead and look at the deck itself. All right. So look at that. Oh boy, we got a bunch of freaking cards, and they're all freaking sweet. Um, this is mostly pretty much what you want to play. You don't really want to screw it up or change too much. You definitely want islands more than you want forest for the most part, because islands you need for days as well as wonder to fly over stuff. So yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. Um, and nothing here is too weird. I'm playing one less Aqua Amoeba because I'm playing like the frantic searches and stuff, so you don't really need a super buttload of discard outlets. And Aqua Amoeba is pretty much the worst one. There are also other options to play for 2 mana discard outlets. We'll talk about those in a little bit later. Um, but yeah, for the creatures, pretty much you always want 4 root walls, you always want 4 wild mongrels, you always want 4 arrogant worms, you always want 2 wonder. Playing 1 wonder is bad. Do not do that. You want a bunch of them. This is one of your best cards against stupid stuff. I love wonder. It's great. It's awesome for discarded. And so, yeah, I mean, the card's sweet. You can't really get any better. And then only 3 Aqua Amoeba because it's the worst discard outlet. It's kind of wonky, kind of awkward. But it's about the best we can do. And of course, we have our counter magic, so days. So being able to go like turn 2 Wild Mongrel days there, 2 or 3 drop or something is pretty strong. Then untap, play your land, and have circular logic mana and just start like discard stuff and going nuts. Pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Yeah, so days circular logic, pretty great. Then we got additional draw and tutor stuff. So frantic search and careful study. Frantic search, pretty sweet, pretty great. Talked about that a little bit. Careful study, another good turn 1 play. The intuition, not 100% sure about that. Maybe it should be another careful study. But intuition's really good. Which brings us to the next part. We're talking about all the flashback spells we got. Oh boy, we got a freaking heckload of them. And by heckload, I mean 6. So we got Roar the Worm. Again, I mean, I guess you could even hardcast the thing, which I've done a couple times. Probably more than a couple times against some really, really grindy decks. Getting like 2 6/6s out of the thing is pretty sweet. If you're just grinded and you don't really care about like, the mana you're spending. So that's great. But typically just a 4 mana 6/6 flying worm thing. And of course, when you use the old style worm tokens, you are the coolest guy of all time. And you actually win at life. So think about that. Then after that, we got Deep Analysis. Again, typically a card you can, you'll just flashback for discarding to, Frantic Search or Wild Mongrel or something. Obviously, the paying life is pretty brutal against red decks, but everything else, it's great because you'll be able to keep the tempo up, keep the pressure. So that's sweet. That's sweet. And of course, you can even hardcast the thing. It's only 4 mana and only costs 1 blue, so that's pretty sweet. And it's got great art, and it's one of my favorite cards. I love casting Deep Analysis, just like I love casting Fact or Fiction. Both good 4 mana blue card draw spells. Lands, again, nothing too wonky. Unfortunately, we only have Yavimaya Coast as our dual lands, but we got 11 islands, 7 forests, and then 4 coasts. You want, like I said, you want more islands due to days and wonder. And you typically only need 1 green mana. So there'll be times where you'll want to play multiple blue spells, but you only really want to play 1 green spell most of the time, every turn. So more islands than forests. And then in the sideboard, again, like I said, always salt to taste for your metagame, what you expect to play. But I got Tormod's Crypts against all the nasty graveyard decks. Pretty much they always do broken, ridiculous things if you let them get away with it. Do not let them. Play your 4 Crypts. It costs you nothing. Really, really great with all the careful studies. You can draw into them, cast them on the first turn. Amazing. And then we have Envelop, or Envelope. I guess you could say Envelope, but I think you need the E at the end for Envelope. Envelop. Good against, say, any sweepers that are sorceries. So, of course, stuff like Wrath of God primarily. Good against a lot of combo decks. They'll play all sorts of nasty, mean sorceries. So, good against that stuff. This one's kind of like, again, not 100% sure about it, but it's pretty sweet. It's a good card to like, 1 mana hard counter. Pretty awesome. Then we've got Seal of Removal. This is a card against Reanimator decks. Then stuff like Oath. So that's pretty sweet against those decks. I mean, because typically they'll just be oathing up stuff that's like, like Cognivore or whatever. And when you make them return to their hand, they don't really have Brainstorm to put it back, unfortunately, for them, not for you. And it's just a good tempo tool in general, so you could always take out like less effective cards to put in seal removal, which is kind of nice. And it's good turn one drop. That all the seals are great one drops. I love the seals. Pretty good stuff. Then we got Naturalize. Naturalize, of course, against artifacts and enchantments. Pretty weird, right? Null Rod against, artifact / tinker base deck / whatever else stupid crap. And then Chill and Hydroblast, of course, against nasty red decks, which can be a problem. Something like Goblins, which has more card advantage than you and can be sometimes faster, as well as Sly, which can just burn you out pretty easily, pretty quickly. So you definitely want cards against them. So yeah, that's pretty much what the deck looks like. Okay. So there's a lot of different options. For example, in the sideboard, you could play like Waterfront Bouncer or Rushing River. Waterfront Bouncer is awesome against stuff like Reanimator and Oath, because they basically can't beat it unless they kill it, which they almost never have. They don't really play a lot of cards that can actually deal with Waterfront Bouncer, so it's kind of like a hard lock. I mean, I know like they're a lot of times back in the day, the matchup against Madness was pretty bad, and Waterfront Bouncer was a big part of that. Then Rushing River, of course. Rushing River bounces multiple permanents. All you have to do is sack a land. That's pretty sweet. Something like Tranquility is pretty sweet because it's very good against the nasty Enchantress decks, and those can be a problem because you have crap like Solitary Confinement, which you can't deal with pre-board, and it basically shuts you down, and they could draw so many cards after that you just, you need to deal with it kind of like now, or you just lose. So that's bad. So there's lots of different options, lots of different stuff to play. Even something like Merfolk Looter would be probably pretty cool, because Looter is very good against the control decks, so you can go a little bit slower. Man, I love Merfolk Looter. That's a good card. Get rid of excess lands and crap like that, or of course is another Madness discard outlet. Good stuff like that. Yeah, some of the numbers can be fudged a little bit. Like I mentioned, not 100% sure about the main deck Intuition, but I like the one. Maybe like one or two less of the discard, or excuse me, not discard spells, but the flashback spells. But I do like having access to either of those. And I'm not sure if I want 4 study and 4 search, or 3 of each, or 4 and 3 of some certain numbers. Again, hard to tell what would be best. Obviously, more careful study means it's easier to fix your hands at the beginning of the game, which might override how good search is. But search lets you do some pretty cool stuff in the mid game. Just be like, blam, like here's a freaking scary arrogant worm out of nowhere, or here's me drawing a bunch of cards, discarding flashback spells, and then casting Intuition for more flashback stuff. Or here's me, drawing and discarding like a Root Walla and a Circular Logic. So you can do all sorts of cool stuff. And there's all sorts of other wonky cards too. I think I saw a list recently that played Nimble Mongoose, which is pretty cool. Nimble Mongoose is a very good card. They played like fetch lands, so 4 of each blue, or 4 of the blue, like 4 Flood Strands, and then 4 Windswept East, and then Nimble Mongoose. So obviously you need the more cards to support Nimble Mongoose. But it's a pretty powerful card. It's a great card against control, especially if you have, let's say, like Wonder in your graveyard. Or at least some control decks, anything that goes hard on black It's a lot less good because they have Dystopia, Perish, Mutilate, all sorts of sorcery speed answers, you know, different edicts, innocent blood. I mean, lots of different things. So that might not be worth it. But it's an interesting idea. I tried all sorts of different things. I tried things like Elvish Spirit Guide and Mox Diamond. I thought those would be cool. Get like a turn one Mongrel, and then turn two all sorts of other cool stuff. You know, really, because I mean your curve basically starts at two. You don't really do a ton of important things on the one drop side of things. So um, yeah, unfortunately, Monk's Diamond didn't really work out well enough. It seems like you have to play a bunch more of them, or I don't know. It wasn't that great. Um, Maybe I'll do more testing with it later. Maybe a split of Monk's Diamond and Elvish Spirit Guide. I don't know. Not sure. Unfortunately, this is a deck that really wants Chromox, and of course, we are one set too late for that. So, is what it is. But uh, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good deck. Pretty good deck. Yep. So that's it. This is a pretty strong deck. Doesn't really have any bad matchups. Can do a lot of good stuff. A pretty decent amount of velocity. Lots of card draw spells. Just just spam and stuff. Just spam freaking dudes and flying over and yeah. So it's pretty good. Pretty consistent deck. Um, Not as fast as I'd like against some of the more aggressive red decks and stuff that can really punish you for tapping out or attacking and leaving an empty board. But still pretty good, pretty good regardless. I like it. I like it a lot. Definitely attacks the format from sort of a different angle. Um, and it can't really be run out of cards. It's hard to sort of like out of like play better cards, play better creatures, you know, because they have big stuff and all this stuff can be big and grinds really well and hard to block. So yeah, it's a pretty sweet deck. Pretty sweet deck. I don't really think it has much of an Achilles heel. Um, yeah, maybe we could get some mono black control v blue green madness. Like that would be cool. You know, that was an interesting matchup. Talk about a matchup where fucking envelop is good. You got mutilate, mind sludge. Oh man, haunting echoes. Oh boy, these are hard things to beat sometimes. You know. So that was a pretty sweet matchup. Man, I freaking love Mono Black Control, and I love Blue Green Madness. That'd be a fun game to play. So yep, that's pretty much it, guys. So a little bit spicy, a little bit of a spicy deck. you you see what I did there? Well. Anyways, so thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this, and have a great day.